Hi there, my name's Virginia Lorenzi, and I'm going to give an orientation to how you can get involved in an HL7 working group with a specific example of a working group I participate in called Patient Empowerment. And so there are four things that you can do that can help kickstart your involvement in HL7 in a working group. Right now, I'm on the HL7.org website. Something I like about the HL7.org website is the About page, because the About page talks about HL7. It says its vision, a world in which everyone can securely access and use the right health data when and where they need it, and the mission to provide standards that empower global health data interoperability. Also on the HL7 website, you can find information about how to participate. People participate in these working groups, and each working group is developing another part of the standard or another standard implementation guide. They have lots of projects that they work on. There's quite a lot of standards work to do. And if you look under resources, you can find information about the work groups. That's the last one on here, but I'm going to show you another place to find information about the work groups. What I really want to point out is listservs. If you go to listservs, this is where you would sign up for a particular project's listserv. The reason why you want to sign up for a project listserv is then you get official notifications from the working group, such as notifications about meetings and meeting cancellations. And it's also how your belonging to a group is counted for any voting, in particular voting that has to do with leadership. So that's one thing, is signing up to the listserv is really important. That's kind of how you belong to the group. You can sign up to a listserv for free. The second thing that really is just the main way people to get started right away, so maybe it should have been the first thing, is conference calls. Go to the working group's conference calls. Every conference, every working group has one main call a week. So you want to find out when that is and attend that call. But working groups also have a whole bunch of other calls that you might want to attend, ones related to their projects. So if you look under events, conference calls, you will find all of the conference calls that are going on HL7. And there are many on every day, because we have the main working group calls, weekly calls, and then there are project and sub-working group calls, and then there's some leadership calls. So encourage you to look there. And if you're not sure what working group you want to participate in, you might want to find one where the calls fit your schedule. But a lot of times that's not how it works. Usually you're passionate about a particular work group, and so you want to see how you can participate in that working group. So we used to use the HL7 website for a lot of our volunteer collaboration in building the standards, but we don't use the website as much anymore. But those are two really important parts, the conference calls and the listserv, right? So here we have conference calls, and under resources we have listservs. But Confluence is the main collaboration site we use to document our work in HL7. So Confluence is where you can find the working groups. You can find a lot of documentation about HL7 here, and you can find all of the agendas and the minutes and information about projects for a working group. If you look over here, this is the main Confluence page, and if you scroll down, you will see all of these different working groups. So many ones to choose from. For example, you could be in the security working group, or consumer working group, or patient care, or emergency care, or clinical decision support. Many different choices of work groups that you can participate in. And then there's also projects and initiatives like our accelerator projects and different management groups. Confluence is a really great place to read a lot about what's going on in HL7 in standards development. But it's especially useful to participate in HL7 to request an account and log in. Because once you get a Confluence ID, then that can be recorded in minutes when you go to those the conference calls as well as HL7 working group meetings. And it's also how you can decide you want to watch a certain page on the HL7 specification. You can click on watching, and then you'll get notifications. Well, let's say in a particular working group, you want to watch to see if any new minutes are posted. You would click this watching button. And it's also how you can see HL7 calendars. So let's go, and also on spaces, it'll show you your favorite spaces. So here you'll see some of my favorite spaces. The main HL7 page that we're on now. HL7 Essentials, which is a really great place to look up anything about HL7 process. Let me go there for a minute. You can see, and that's a good one to watch. You can watch that. I'm gonna watch all content in this space. Maybe I'll even watch the tree. And then I'll get notifications if anything changes. And then on here, I see information about the HL7 organization and about process and about how HL7 is managed, as well as, and decisions are made, because you know we're at this international volunteer stakeholder organization. So, you know, the process is very important because we need to make decisions that will be good for the world. And then balloting, how you vote on specifications. And that's as you get more involved in HL7. I just want to take a minute and go back to the hl7.org website and show you one thing. I showed you under events, conference calls. That is like where the main work of HL7 happens. Every week there's conference calls. But there are two other special events that happen, and each of them happens 3 times a year. There are the 3 times a year working group meetings and the 3 times a year connect-a-thons. Working group meetings are these intensive weeks, usually January, May, and September. Might be the month before, potentially, or month after. But in those, there's a week in those months where there is a full week of standards development. So the stakeholders come together and they participate in full days in their working groups, and sometimes people work in multiple working groups, working to develop and advance the standards together. And then connect-a-thons are 2 to 3 day events where we actually test the standard before we're really even done with it. We get software developers there to kind of kick the tires on it and try it out in an agile methodology method. And then we learn a lot about what we really need in the standard by having people start using it even before it's been published. So those are 2 really important events where you can participate in standards development more intensely. But those do cost money to participate in. But the working group calls are free, and you don't need to be a member of HL7 to participate in those calls. You don't need to be a member or pay anything to be on the list server, and you don't need to be a member or pay anything to be on Confluence. So let's go back to the Confluence page. I told you there are places I hang out a lot under Spaces. I also hang out in Fire. That's because the Fire page is where I can find out about the things like, you know, most important thing going on Fire, which is the standard that our main focus in HL7. It's our future and it's our today. But Fire is also where I'm tracking information right now about the January Connect-a-thon. There are a lot of people that are preparing for that January Connect-a-thon. And my work group is one of those groups. It's our first Connect-a-thon. We're very excited. So I'm paying attention there and looking at all the different tracks and all the information and orientation sessions that I could find under Fire Connect-a-thon to learn more about the upcoming Connect-a-thon. But the place I spend most of my time is under Patient Empowerment. That's the working group that I do most of my volunteer participation. And when you go into a working group Confluence page, each working group is a little different. They each have their own personality and they've set up their pages in different ways, but you can find the same kind of thing on every working group page. For example, you'll find a working group's mission and charter. Ours is right in front of you. Our mission is the Patient Empowerment Work Group promotes and amplifies the viewpoint of patients and their caregivers in HL7 standards work in support of the HL7 mission. You will find the co-chairs of the working group. Every working group has several leaders who facilitate the group. The current co-chairs are myself and Debbie Willis and Dave DeBronkart. You'll also find information about the call. In addition to finding on that big call list on HL7 events, conference calls, you're going to find the calls also directly on the Confluence page. So here you see the call info. And actually, we also have the list server info right on our page. But I wanted to show you those main places in HL7 in case you want to sign up for multiple list servers or find multiple calls, or if you don't find this on a main page of a working group. And then typical things you will see is you'll see working group meeting information, because for each working group, we carefully keep minutes. And the patient empowerment work group hasn't been around that long. So we've only participated in 2 working group meetings. Our working group meetings, we have minutes, you have agendas and minutes for every working group meeting. I'm just going to jump onto the September one. You will see that we met quite a bit on the September working group meeting, not the whole week, but because people went to other meetings and did other things, but we did the whole meeting virtually. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, all of the working group meetings were in person. But since the pandemic hit, we've been doing all of them virtually. So that's the current state of things, at least until September 2021, through September 2021. And then we also have on here weekly conference calls. And this is where you'll find agenda and minutes of the working group main call every week. So you can go and learn a lot more about what's going on by looking at those. Also, each working group has projects they're working on. And so we have a projects folder, and under the projects, and that's how we're doing our standards development work. We have advanced directives interoperability, which is just getting approved now. We have patient contributed data, which is where that's a group that is developing a white paper on patient contributed data to figure out where we can kind of go in and do more. And patient corrections, which is a patient's request for a correction to the record, and that group is developing a FHIR implementation guide. And then underneath each of these, you would find minutes and other project documentation. And every project in HL7 has a project scope statement, just like a project would in a regular organization. That's how we manage our work, is with projects. So you see, Confluence is important. So you need to get a Confluence ID. You also know that it's important to get to sign up for the list server of the working group you want to join. And you also know it's important to join the calls. I mentioned that the calls, you have a weekly call for the group, but there could be subgroup calls. We have that in patient empowerment. And you can find all the calls, of course, on HL7.org events conference calls, but we've actually set up our project calls under a calendar. So you can see our patient corrections call, our contributed data call, as well as our PASSIO call. That's where we do that in the PASSIO project. That's where they're working on advanced directives, and our weekly call. And we've also are managing some of our project milestones and tasks using this calendar just to help us be organized within the group on what we need to do. Like I said, each group has a bit of their own personality. The final place, but not any less important, where I want to say you would get started in really participating in the work group, is on chat.phire.org on the Zulip stream. So it's called Zulip, that's the vendor that makes the chat. But chat.phire.org, you can find discussion threads on many, many different topics. And the implementation stream is where a lot of software developers who are using FHIR do a lot of their communication. And then there are also ones that are related to many different initiatives, as well as work groups. And patient empowerment actually has its own stream, which is very busy. You'll see that we have many topics, and we have done quite a bit on here. It's pretty active. So the thing is, you can look around in here, but what you really need to do is create a login. So you can log in. Once you can log into chat.phire.org, you can participate in these conversations. And you can also message people. So, but the idea of it is not so much doing private messages, but to do conversations on the chat, because we try to do our work in HL7 so that it's transparent, and so other people can chip in and benefit, and when we can, and that's what makes the HL7 standard so great, is all this, you know, collaboration in an open environment. So going back, what are the 4 things you can do? 4 things you do to get yourself started. And there are also 4 things that, and these 4 things you can do for free. So again, I'm going to go back to spaces, patient empowerment, because that is the working group where, you know, I'm especially active in. And I wanted to show you in our working group, we actually have a newcomers page. And I'm bringing it up because I just want to show you that it says these things to do to kickstart your HL7 workgroup participation. So again, these tools that I think are really important collaboration tools as you get started: Confluence, list servers, chat.fire.org, and online meetings. We do our conference calls. And the 4 steps to getting active in patient empowerment work group, but any work group, would be: 1, come to the weekly call, free to participate. Our weekly call, patient empowerment, is Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have the call information right on our Confluence page. Join that list server. Whatever working group you're participating in, join the list server. So here's how you would join the patient empowerment list server. Visit the workgroups page on Confluence and click on that watch button. And make sure you get that Confluence ID. I have made it a checkbox here. Create a Confluence account. So you want to join the list server, create a Confluence account. And then get to know the projects and consider joining some of the project calls of your work group, or whatever sub call they have, spin-off calls. And then follow and participate conversations on chat.fire.org. This is our patient empowerment stream, but you have to sign up for chat.fire.org so you can become part of that conversation. And all of these things are free. You do not need to be a member to do these things. Some other important ways to participate, and this is also where paid membership becomes more important, is connectathons, which do have a fee associated with them. They're not free. Working group meetings, which also have a fee associated with them, and balloting. Balloting is where you actually get to vote on the specifications that are, you know, going to be used, you know, in all different countries and around the world. You get to ballot and get your opinion in, where you can say your suggestions, your recommendations, your concerns, things you really don't think should go in there, or things you think are really missing. You get a chance to ballot, and to ballot, you need to be a member, or there's a cost. And then also voting on HL7 leadership, who is going to help steer this organization forward. And to vote on HL7 leadership, you need to be a member. So all of these things are things that you either get a discount on as a member, or you need to be a member. And the member rates are on HL7.org. But the real reason to be a member in HL7 is really because you believe in the cause and you want to support this cause of furthering interoperability in healthcare. To learn more about HL standards and how to use them, you might want to consider the educational offerings of HL7, which you can find also on this is a link to the HL7 website, education. And to learn more about HL7 processes, I remind you to go back to that HL7 Essentials page, which is, you know, right there on Confluence. I have unlinked to it because that has everything about the organization, process, and balloting. There are other important tools that we might use in HL7 and other, you know, details that and processes that you might find useful to you as on your HL7 journey. But these 4 things: going to weekly calls, joining the joining the list server, checking out Confluence and setting up a Confluence account, and following and participating in the conversations and getting a chat.fire.org account. Those 4 things are important. They're not the 4 I listed here, but I also suggest you look at projects. Thank you. And I'm really excited about your interest in participating in HL7 work. It certainly has been my participation in HL7. I have learned so much. It's been really great for my career. I have met so many wonderful people And I'm very excited about how I've seen the world transformed by the standards that I have had a part in developing, humbly, side by side with these other amazing volunteers from all over the world. Thank you. Bye.